Alright boys, today we're going to be doing a meta report for week 1 of Regulation E. We'll be talking about some of the best performing teams from tours. I'll be showing off some of the teams I've used or played against on the ladder that I think are worth sharing. Then finally we'll talk about some Pokemon that I think are really good into the current meta. Alright guys, so to start things off here, we're going to be looking at some tours that came up over the last week for Regulation E. Now, look, most of these tournaments didn't really have a crazy amount of players. Obviously, everyone's still trying to figure out the metagame. Some people are still playing the DLC and whatnot, so, take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, numbers are small here. The teams are... Well, let's just say one player in particular has kind of been dominating these tours. But yeah, there's also another really small tour, but I kind of want to show it off just because I think the team that won it is really, really good. So to start things off here, we have a practice tournament here, won by Ranghome, and then obviously here we see some pretty, decent teams. Obviously, some good mix here of DLC mons, but the main thing we see here is a lot of Ogerpawns. So we do see 3 Ogerpawns here in the top 4, which I do think is pretty good. Obviously, very small tournament here, only 15 players. But you do start to see kind of a trend of a lot of things, and I'll kind of get into it, as we go on here, but Ogerpawn tends to be just everywhere. This one is really, really good. Unfortunately, we can't actually see what they are without clicking on the teams here, but we do see here, obviously, Ranghome did win this with a Water Terror on his Ogerpawn, which I do think was really cool. He also paired it up with He's also paired it up with the Flutterfish, which personally is a big, a favorite combo of mine. I think Flutterfish is really, really good. Not to mention he has Scarf, Orlando T, which I do think is one of the best Pokemon in the metagame right now. Iron Hands is always really good. And then King Gambit is also super interesting. This is something I've been noticing picking up on the ladder as well. I think it just has a really good matchup into a lot of things. Obviously, Defiance, a fantastic ability. Especially, when things like Bleak Wind Storm and Icy Wind are getting spammed everywhere. I think having a really good Defiant one is pretty damn good. Then quickly, look, I don't want to go too deep into a lot of these teams here, but just to briefly look at it, we do see here an Ursa Lunar Blood Moon, had a good result. Once again, though, a Terra Water Ogerpawn winning, coming second here. Sorry, not winning, but coming second. Really, really good. Chen Pao's another one I think is fantastic. We see the Brick Break here, which I do think is actually quite interesting, but pretty good into a lot of the meta mons. I would like to see Sacred Sword personally, but Brick Break is there, especially for things like screens, which I do think are pretty decent right now. And then really, I don't want to go too much into these other teams here. We see a pretty standard Regidrago team. We see another Ogerpawn here. What is this? Is this another Water Ogerpawn? Wow. So 3 Water Ogerpawns in the top 4 is actually really, really crazy. But yeah, look, we'll skip over this one for now. I don't really think there's too much else to talk about. Obviously, it's a very small, very small tournament, so there's only 4 players who went 4 and 2. But yeah, still really interesting just to see 3 Water Ogerpawns in the top 4. Then we'll move over to this one here, the Samurai Showdown. Now, Donk, get used to it, boys. This guy, I think he won like 3 tours this week. Pretty good player, clearly. With a Regulation C team, which is actually really, really interesting. We do actually see here first and second both running the exact same team. It is really interesting to see Dondozo here because I think it's one of those things, as the power creep gets more and more, you kind of feel like a Pokemon like Dondozo would fall off, but I think Dondozo actually, especially as metagames like this develop, gets better because all of a sudden you have all this crazy offense, like Flutterfish, Chen-Pao, D-Knight, and they're able just to break holes in teams, and then things like Dondozo can then just come in and really start, swooping through. And also, because Dondozo usage is down, we do get to see things like Oblivious being played, because before you would have to run Unaware for the mirror matchup, because if you didn't have Unaware and they did, basically you could not win the Dondozo mirror, and if you couldn't win the Dozo mirror, the game was practically done. So yeah, it is really interesting to see here that both Donk and his opponent, basically ran the exact same team. But yeah, obviously, not the team you necessarily want to see at the top of the metagame. Obviously, this is just basically 3 really good duos, and they just, yeah, they've been dominating. Congrats to Conk, though. He's been doing amazing work. But we do see here at number 3, this is a team I actually do plan on, kind of touching on a bit later. And that is the Baxcalibur Snow teams. Now, this one is really, really interesting because, again, for those of you who don't know, Baxcalibur basically gets like 2 enormous buffs in Regulation E. One of which is he actually has a good Snow Setter now in Alolan Ninetales. They pair really well together. We see here as well Alolan Ninetales packing the Howl on this team, which is actually a really, really cool tech. I've seen Howl on the regular Cantonian Ninetales. I had not seen it on Alolan Ninetales. But basically, that's really good because on a set like this, it actually allows, the Ice Shard as well, which I think is really cool for Baxcalibur. But yeah, the other main buff, I guess, for Bax here as well, obviously, is the Loaded Dice set just got even better because now it has Scale Shot. You're talking about a Pseudo Legend with a crazy high attack stat, really good bulk, and its kind of main drawback was it just had average speed. So when you pair like Alolan Ninetales with it, and one that, has Aurora Veil, to make it even bulkier. It has things like Icy Wind, which obviously in this case we don't see it here, to, obviously help with speed out of it. And then obviously Howl as well, the Snow giving you extra physical, defense. It's really good. And then all of a sudden, this one has now an ability to, hit you with 100 base power, move. while also getting up, a speed boost, which is pretty damn crazy. You see it here paired with the Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and the Cresselia, and then just really good stuff in the Urshi and the Rillaboom. It is interesting though. We have you will start to notice actually the drop off really in Urshifu Rapid, and I do think that potentially is also because of our good friend Ogerpon there. But we see here the best Ogerpon placement was 5th, and there was only 3 in the top 8, none of which actually made the top 4, which is really, really interesting. We see Legacy here with a pretty interesting Trick Room team, actually. Weezing plus, like, a pretty standard Trick Room team. I do think that's pretty cool. Rocky Helmet Weezing 2 here. Sludge Bomb plus Dazzling Gleam is also really interesting. I do really like that. It's a bit different to how I was playing it. I was playing it with Pain Split as well. But that is a really cool take on it. But yeah, look, just good Trick Room. I do think Trick Room stocks are up right now. Trick Room feels really good. Just because a lot of teams are just so hyper offensive. I quickly want to have a look at this here too. We do see our first Fire Mask Ogerpon here, which in my opinion is probably, at least in my opinion, the best one. So really good. This is a very similar team to what I've actually been running myself. It is just a really good Torn, Tailwind plus Manual Sunny Day. I think it's really good when you have things like Specs Fluttermane and then, just Ogerpon, Terroring, getting +1, giving it Speed Boost, giving it Sun. Just a really, really good set. We see our Rain team here. Really interesting take on Rain. I personally have actually been loving Banded Hisuian Arcanine on Rain. I think it patches up a lot of weaknesses. Hisuian Arcanine is another mon I do plan on touching on just a little bit later too, because I do think that is a really, really good mon. And then finally, to round things out here, we had another Rain team here going 4-1. Very, very interesting take on it. Just curious what... Okay, another Water one. Wow, so Water one actually quite popular. I personally thought Fire would be used more. So I'm definitely curious to see how it goes, how it kind of changes as we go further into it. I'll quickly check this one too, just to give it, yeah, and another Water one. Wow, okay. Was it like 5 Water, 1 Fire, and none of the other 2. So yeah, kind of crazy to see them all, basically the Water one just dominating the usage here. This tournament here, I quickly just want to touch on this. My guy Mario, he's a good friend of mine. Obviously a very small tournament, but he's a very good player, very skilled, one of the best seniors players in the world. And you do see here, he's just got a team that I would say is just really good, right? It feels like just a solid balanced team. Roaring Moon is another mon that I think we're only going to see it get better. I think Knockoff's a big improvement to it. I think Acrobatics is really good into the current meta game. Not to mention, it's a pretty good Tailwind setter, especially, if you don't want to run things like Tornadus. Alola Ninetales is just another great mod on balance. You kind of set up the screens and go from there. Another, Follow Me Water Ogerpon as well. Like, I've touched on it in previous videos. I think Ogerpon is like... Sorry, Water Ogerpon is like the best support, right? Water Absorb is just such a good ability, especially with things like Urshifu on the, out and about. So... yeah, having that mon being there is just like really, really good. And then look, this is just regular good stuff. Hisuian Arcanine's another mon. Again, I think we're going to continue to see this mon. Gold is just another really good mon. Interesting that we're seeing the Terra Flying here. And then again, Iron Hands, just another really, really good mon. We see here though the Palkia Academy tournament. This is where we finally start getting a decent amount of players. 36, pretty good. Conkeldonk once again with the clean sweep, which is, again, the douche has been taking the piss lately. Shout outs to him. We do see here a really, really interesting Gallade Trick Room team as well. It's kind of like hybrid where, they got the Blood Moon Ursaluna, but then the Scope Lens Sharpness set on Gallade, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, puts it to a 50% chance to crit moves like Psycho Cut. Could be wrong. But yeah, just Trick Room, Wide Guard, Double Stab, really good. I don't want to say it's a... Oh, we see Burning Jealousy here on the Chiyu as well, which is really, really interesting. And also no Heat Wave. Okay. That's a lot more interesting than I thought. But again, really cool team. It's good to see Trick Room doing good, but as an offensive player, I hate it. But yeah, look, most of these teams here relatively standard. It's really what you're going to see a lot of, right? You're going to see a lot of Ogerpon, a lot of Tornadus, a lot of Urshi, a lot of Chien-Pao, Iron Hands, Landorus. I really quickly want to check on the mask these guys are wearing. So we've got another Hearthflame here. Good. Hearthflame stonks going up, boys. Another one here. Another Hearthflame. We love to see it. I think I just checked that one, right? Did we check this one already? Another Hearthflame. Okay, so here's all the Fire Mask, boys. This is all it was. Yeah, they were some earlier tournaments. Now we're really starting to see the Fire Mask. Yeah, and there's another Fire Mask there. So a lot of Fire Masks, here in the top 8, which is good to see. Another Roaring Moon too, which I also love to see here. Again, you see this one here. He's got the DD Terra Flying. Really, really good set for balance as well, I think. The DD Roaring Moon, because if you're in a position, this one's Cornerstone Mask, actually, the Stone version. Wow, okay. I can definitely see this working. You've got a Redirection Mon, you've got an Intimidate Mon, you got Fake Out, paired up with, the Roaring Moon, it can put it in a really, really good position, basically to sweep through a DD. Because if you get up that Dragon Dance, it is just, it's a wrap, man. Tommy Tuesdays, though, here's a really interesting one, because this is a really cool Trick Room team. So obviously we see here, you know, the Psy Spam Armarouge indeed doing its thing. King Gambit once again winning another tournament. This mon is, as I said, I think really, really good anti-meta mon. I think it's fantastic into the Trick Room matchups. It's also really, really good just in general into the metagame. Because again, you see a lot of these Tornadoes running around. They tend to only have one attacking move, which is Bleak Wind Storm. You resist it and you have a chance to get a +2 attack level, which is crazy. But yeah, Enamorous T is another one actually I've seen doing a bit of work, especially on ladder. Like, if you get this mod in the right position, it can really pump out damage with, like, you know, Pixie Plate and, like, Terra Fairy. It just starts sweeping. And then, again, like, Fairy plus, like, Earth coverage is just insane. Again, we'll kind of touch on it later when I talk about some, you know, specific Pokemon. But yeah, Fairy Ground coverage, amazing. I think Hisuian Lilligant as well is, like, really good into the metagame because in Sun, there's a lot of mons that, like, don't really want to deal with it, that I think is like, you know, like even if they have like Tool and Tailwind, like Hisuian Lilligant can still outspeed and do, you know, a lot of work. And then finally another Conkle Donk win here. I do believe this was number 3 for him. Once again rocking the same team. Yeah, so you know that is what it is. You know, he's out here, he's dominating with his team. We do see number 2 here though, winning with a Sylveon, which I do think is a bit of an underrated mon at the minute. I think Sylveon kind of offers some things that Floodamain doesn't, especially in like the bulk department. And also, you know, just like being able to just like fire off things like, you know, Hyper Voice and Terra Blast that we do see here. Obviously, you know, it doesn't have the Moon Blast, but Hyper Voice, you know, of Pixelate is just kind of crazy, especially with specs. Once again, though, actually, I don't want to say once again, because like we see the Fire Mask again, right? He's on the way up. But this is a combo I don't think we've actually seen near the top of the tournament yet, and that's the Rilla plus Ogerpawn. Obviously, setting up Terrain for Grassy Glide is really good. Shampow's here, Hisuian Arcanines here. This is just good stuff, plus Sylveon on a balance, which I do think is actually a really, really cool team. Is there anything else we really want to touch on here? We see another Hisuian Lilligant Trick Room team. Obviously, you know, I do think the Archetype's pretty damn good. We see, is that like a Joe UX9 team right there? We got the Ninetales plus Jump Bluff, double Tailwind. Interesting. Anything else too crazy? What kind of mask are we wearing here? Oh, it's our first grass one. Okay, so we have actually seen already. That's actually one of each Ogerpawn now, at least in like top 8s of tournaments. So that is kind of cool. Is that top 8 actually? Let me double check if that was top 8. Yeah, he was 8. Perfect. So yeah, it is actually really cool to see that, like a Life Orb set is here. Because obviously the thing with this mon is it doesn't get the built-in boost that the others get. So like even if you hold something like a Miracle Seed, your coverage moves basically aren't as good as the coverage moves on the other, like the mask forms would be. But yeah, so it is cool to see Life Orb because technically you are getting a bit more damage out of your Ivy Cudgel than the other guys are. Alright guys, now quickly just jumping over to Showdown here, I kind of want to just touch on some of the cores that I've seen. Like, we're not going to look at too many teams here, but we're going to basically go over the cores of what I've seen and what I think are good, especially for like ladder. Obviously best of 3 is a bit, you know, difficult right now. We're only 1 week into the format. I've done a bunch of testing. I think right now I'm sitting at like rank 200 or something. So, you know, we're up there. We played up against, you know, a lot of pretty good teams. I've seen a lot of what people are running. I've played probably 200-300 games of the format. So yeah, I'll quickly just share, you know, a couple of the teams I've seen that are doing good. Personally, I've tested most of these myself. Other ones, I've seen them just, you know, be really high on ladder. But basically, the first team is like built around Tornadoes. Now, Tornadoes, I feel, is really good for a couple of reasons. One, I think flying is incredibly good into the current metagame. It feels like every team has like 2 grass types, especially with like Ogerpawn, you know, Amoonguss, Rillaboom, Sinistra. Like, it just feels like every team has got 2 grass types. So having a flying type mon is like really, really damn good. And, you know, kind of touching on some of those mons there, I think Tornadoes right now, paired up with things like Fluttermane, obviously one of the best Pokemon in the game, and then Ogerpawn, in particular the Fire or Water, I do think they are the 2 best. We did say that in our video the other day when we were ranking these mons, but I do think like this core right here is just absolutely insane, especially too because Tornadoes, obviously, you know, you're getting up the Tailwind, making your boys fast, but you've also got Manual Sunny Day, so when you're running things like, you know, Choice Specs Fluttermane, and then also I've been running Fairy Feather myself. I just like, you know, Fairy Feather, Terra Fairy, and then yeah, you just run like, you know, you kind of run just enough basically to make sure. How was I doing it? I think this is how I had mine, right? I was like 170 modest. Yeah, so I've been running my Fluttermane something like this, basically just to like enable the bulk on it, right? You kind of want to have like enough bulk to leave your Ice Spinners. And then especially too, if you like in matchups where your opponent doesn't have like Tailwind yourself, you can just get up the Sun and all of a sudden this Fluttermane is absolutely just ripping holes through team with Terra Fairy, Dazzling Gleams, Moonblast, you know, whatever. Ogerpawn, again, like Ivy Cudgel in the Sun is absolutely busted. This is basically Flare Blitz without the recoil, but it also has a high chance to crit. And then when you Terra, not only do you get, you know, the adaptability boost, you also get +1, and then you get the Sun boost, and this one absolutely just starts nuking in the Sun. Like I've had matchups where like I'll KO or resist from like 70-80%. Like, I'm sure a lot of people have spoken about the Culks too. You've got a mod like Iron Hands. You look how like naturally, oh, that's not Iron Hands. You have a look like how naturally bulky this mon here is, right? 154 HP is absolutely absurd. 108 defense is also really, really good. And this mon just gets one shot by Ivy Cudgel in the sun, dude. It's absolutely bonkers, man. It's freaking crazy. But yeah, really, some other mons that you kind of want to pair with this. Personally, I'm a big fan of Chen Pao. Again, I think flying types are really good right now because of how good grass types are. And on top of that, because grass types are good, ice is just really good. It beats grass, it beats flying. Just a fantastic mon, man. It pairs really well with Ogerpon and, some of the other mons it wants to pair with. And some of those other mons too. We're talking about like things like Rillaboom. I think Rillaboom, obviously, giving you Grassy Glide, giving you Fake Out, is just a really, really solid mon. Landorus is another really good mon as well here. I think Flutter plus Lando is just amazing. Like we kind of touched on it earlier, but Fairy and ground coverage is just absurd. Lando can also play these like potential EQ builds as well when you pair it with things like Tornadus. I also think Scarf Terra Flying is also really, really broken on this one at the minute. But other mons this core likes as well, like things like Urshifu is obviously really good. Dark Urshi is amazing if you're playing Sun. If you're playing like a Rain variant where like maybe you've got Ogerpon Water on this team, Urshi Rapid as well can be really good because having just two insanely strong, water types in Rain is like, it's really freaking good, dude. Like, let's be honest, it's really freaking good. But yeah, that's kind of like the Torn cores right now. Like, I think these three here in particular are the ones that like make it go. And then things like obviously, Chen Pao, Urshi, Rilla, Lando, they really round out the team. Also Fluttermane as well. Oh, sorry, not Fluttermane, Chi-Yu. I've also been running Chi-Yu on cores like this because like, again, Chi-Yu with specs in Sun is absolutely bonkers, dude. Like, you KO, like, I've KO'd like Landorus's from full. I've KO'd Heatrans from full. Yeah, and like, I tend to also just like run like Ghost on this. And also that's me playing Timid. Like, I'm going Timid and just like one-shotting these mods that like I have no business one-shotting. Now, another kind of core that I want to talk about is more of like it's not like Tailwind Hyper offense. It's kind of just like good stuff offense, right? So like that revolves around things like Fluttermane. It's also like really good with like an Urshi personally. Really good with an Urshifu. Personally, like when I'm running these teams similar to what I'm like about to show off, I really like Dark Urshi. But these cores also really like things like, if you're not playing like Tailwind, things like Rillaboom and Iron Hands are like fantastic on this team, right? Obviously having like Fake Out support, like if you don't have Trick Room is really, really important. Sorry, if you don't have Tailwind is really important. Also, Rillaboom is really good into things like Side Spam. Iron Hands is just a great Pokemon in general. And again, like on these teams as well, like, because what you can kind of do, right, is you go Rillaboom, like, hey, that's like my Fake Out mon. You go this like Ogerpon mon, and then because you're pairing with Rillaboom, you just go like Grassy Glide. And it's like, hey, we don't have, we don't have access to, speed control, right? But what I do have here is a, like, insanely strong Stab Sucker Punch. I also have, like, a Grassy Glide here. I have a Grassy Glide here. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, hey, I don't have speed, but I, I've got really good priority. Not to mention, teams need to take up a turn to get up their speed control, right? So it's like, hey, Tornadus, if you want to click Tailwind, I'm going to just drop a Ivy Cudgel on you. I'm going to one-shot you. I'm going to, nuke them on next to you, and then I'm going to put it in range of Grassy Glide, and then it's like, hey, now you're pinned, you can't move. It's just, like, really, really good. Some other, like, great mons as well when you're pairing with this, especially if you're going, like, Dark Urshi, I think Golden Go is, like, really good. Especially, too, if you do run, like, a Ogerpon, like, say, on a team like this, you run, like, the Water Ogerpon, and then you can run, like, Follow Me, pair that up with Gold, and then Gold can go for just things like Leftovers plus Plot. Because I also think, too, as well, like, probably, like, going, we'll just, like, change this over here, yeah. So I think like this like core of 3 is also like really good, because obviously like Lefty's Plot Gold paired up with our good friend Rillaboom's Grassy Terrain is really good, right? Covers you from your earthquakes, and then on top of that also it's just like it gives you 12 HP, sorry, 12% regen per turn, which is kind of crazy. So it gives you like a plot, you take a bit of damage, you protect up, bang, you just got a quarter of your health back. Obviously, Follow Me is like really, really good with our friend Golden Go, especially into things like Fluttermane. If Fluttermane can't like Shadow Ball your Golden Go, it puts it in a really, really tricky position. So yeah, like a really, really good core there as well. And also too, like when I'm playing like Golden Go cores, like another really good mod on teams like this is Roaring Moon. And again, like this core of like 4 here, I think could be like really, really good together. Because basically Roaring Moon benefits from the exact same thing Golden Go does in this this combo, right? It basically gives you another setup mon, right? So you're talking about like a Dragon Dancer. And this Dragon Dancer loves redirection from mons like Ogerpon. Not to mention it loves Fake Out support from things like Rillaboom. And then on top of that, it just pairs really well with Golden Go. These two just cover each other so perfectly defensively. I'm almost certain it's actually like everything that Roaring Moon's weak to, Golden Go resists, and vice versa, right? You think about Roaring Moon, it's weak to ice, Golden Go's a steel type. It's weak to, fairies. Again, Golden Go resists that. Golden Go's, weak to fire. Obviously, Dragon resists that. It's weak to Ghost. Dark resists that. They combo each other so well defensively. I think it is like a really, really good core. And again, having like these two next to each other to like say like, hey, Roaring Moon, you're gonna get up that Dragon Dance, and then you're gonna be able to sweep, and anything that really threatens it from there, it's like, hey, like, do you want to follow me? Do you want to eat this like Grassy Glide that's terrain boosted? It's like, I've got Grassy Glide, I got Fake Out. It's just a really, really good balanced core. And there's a lot of different pieces, right? You can move things around. If you don't want to run things like, Ogre plus Rilla, right? You can go for things like Iron Hands plus Amoonguss and whatnot. So the cores like this are just like really, really solid. They, put out a lot of damage. And again, I think multiple Ogre Pawn forms work on this team as well. Because you could even run like Fire Ogre Pawn on a team like this and just say like, hey, I'm just going to start nuking. Because when there's a Roaring Moon and an Ogre Pawn on the board at the same time, it's like, what are you going to do? The Fluttermane can't just Dazzling Gleam, because then you're just going to get one shot by the Ivy Cudgel, and then at the same time, if they don't lead their speed control option, then all of a sudden it feels really weird, because like, it's like, well, I'm going to threaten the one shot on you, or like Roaring Moon could also tear out into flying type and get up Tailwind, because like that's another thing as well, right? You don't have to run Dragon Dance on these sets, like depending on the team. You can always run Tailwind. Knockoff is obviously like a broken move. Acrobatics is like really good as well, so yeah, like really, really strong core. There are like some of the other mods you can add to this too are things like Hisui and Arcanine. I think is a great addition. Landorus as well. Like again, these are mods you'll hear me talk about a lot, because I think like there are mons that are like good, and then there are mons that are just like anti-good mons. And I do think Hisui and Arcanine is one of those. I think it's really, really good in the metagame. But we'll kind of touch on that a bit later when we do a bit more of a breakdown. Another core as well I kind of want to touch on, like the Wheezing cores, because I do think the Wheezing cores actually have a lot of potential. I think, neutralizing gas is like really, really good. And again, with things like, with things like tornadoes running around, it just feels nice to be able to just put a stop to it, right? Just say, hey, you're not getting up your pranks to Tailwind. And then like all of a sudden it's like my Regieleki, he's one-shotting you with an electric move, and there's not much you can really do about it, Not much you can do about it. But yeah, these cores as well. For me, when I play Wheezing, I really like to play this as a kind of like a mid-range team, where it's like, hey, you're going to use it as like turns to setup, maybe try to hinder your opponent, because like this mon with Willow, it has access to things like Will-O-Wisp. It also has Pain Split, right? So it can be just like a nuisance. It sits there with like Rocky Helmet. You can't really, nuke it down. It's just annoying. You've got things like Regieleki to like enable it. Again, it's like, hey, you've got Tornadoes. Guess what? You're not getting up to speed control. You pair it up with things, like for example, Roaring Moon, our good friend. We're kind of touching on it earlier. Like the Dragon Dance set, I do think is really good on this. Another really cool thing too is Wheezing actually doesn't turn off photosynthesis. So booster energy is like really, really good because of that. Again, there's some other cool mons. Like I do think Fluttermane again pairs like really nicely with it, because again, like the way you outspeed Fluttermane normally is like you use your Tornadoes to outspeed it, right? But it's like, hey, you actually can't, like, your Tornadoes can't actually help you outspeed me right now. Because obviously, you've turned off Prankster. And again, it's another one that likes playing a slow game. You can also run things like Calm Mind on it, so you can play like a really bulky variant where, maybe you go something like, just 36 Modest, pump it into bulk, run a bit of speed, but then from there you just get up the Calm Mind and just sweep through. Really, really good. Landorus is another one as well, actually, I do think cores like this love, because again, the gameplay with a core like this is, you want to burn them, you want to intimidate them, you kind of want to wear them down, chip them down, and then eventually you get into the Roaring Moon, the Fluttermane, and basically just finish off the sweep. Iron Hands is another really good mon. I would say Rillaboom again, because I'm just a massive fan of Rilla, but obviously turning off your own terrain kind of sucks. And again, Iron Hands doesn't use its ability as is, so obviously pairing that and, in the Wheezing slot is also, pairing it with the Wheezing is also just really, really solid. And then finally, the last team I kind of want to touch on, basically we touched on one of the teams earlier, so I'm sure you can go look at their spreads there if you're interested. But it is the Alola Ninetales plus Baxcalibur set here, right? So, oh my god, I can't English, can't type and talk at the same time apparently. Obviously, I think Bax is like super, super anti-meta. Again, I kind of want to touch on mons individually once I go over the concepts of these teams. But I do think Baxcalibur is just like a really, really good metamon. I kind of touched on it before. Flying's really good. Grass is really good. Because of that, Baxcalibur is really good. Not to mention Dragon typing is just really good into all the Ogre Pawns. Really the only one that can kind of... I mean, the Fire one hits it for neutral, obviously. But the Stone one can obviously, threaten it a lot. But again, Dragon types just in general feel really, really good right now. Again, this core loves Ogre Pawn Water. Just, it's a great redirection support. Follow me, paired up with Baxcalibur. Really, really good. And like Spiky Shield also like just better than Protect, let's be honest. But yeah, look, this core from there, you can go a lot of ways. Like Tornadus, obviously always really good, making sure Baxcalibur has the speed control. The Urshis as well are nice here. Obviously, you know, water could be good, dark could be good depending on, you know, if you do bring an Ogerpon, which one you bring. Fluttermane's obviously really good here. Landorus is really good here. It's kind of just like your core concept is like Baxcalibur plus Ninetales is kind of, you know, it's kind of like your balance HO. It's like, hey, I want to get up my screens. I want to kind of set up and then sweep through. And then the rest of the stuff you kind of put around, it just depends on how you want to play. If you want to go fast, you go Tornadus. You could always add like a Cresselia slow mode on this team as well. Like, you know, go like Cresselia plus Ursaluna, and then you just have like a fake out support plus like an Ogerpon, for example. You go like Crest, Luna, Ogerpon, Rillaboom, Baxcalibur, Ninetales, so stuff like that. But yeah, another just really good core. And then finally, guys, I kind of just want to like go a bit more in depth onto some of the Pokemon I think are the best in the metagame right now, and really why. And the first guy I want to talk about is Chien-Pao. Now, again, I feel like I'm going to say this a lot, but it feels like every team has like 2 flying types and 2 grass types. Every team's got Lando, every team's got Tornadus, every team's got Rillaboom, every team's got an Ogerpon. And what do they all hate? They all hate eating freaking Ice Spinner. Like, not to mention, Ice Spinner is just really good into Rillaboom, obviously. You know, getting rid of the grassy terrain, I think, is really good. And then again, you just hit everything for super effective. Obviously, Sucker Punch is like a great priority move. I've personally also been running Crunch as well to like help me out with Trick Room matchups. Because a lot of people, especially like on Open Team Sheet, they're not ready for the Crunch. And yeah, just Crunch into things like Cresselia, into things like, you know, I'd say into like Side Spam, but normally you just want to get rid of their terrain anyway. Man, it's just really good. This dude, you know, he goes Focus Sash. He eats, you know, a hit or two. He gets his Protect. He's like one of the like few really offensive mons that can like eat a hit from like Urshifu. All you've got to do is that. You just go like this. You go Adamant. You go whatever Terry you want, obviously. Ghost is really good. I've been testing Dark. But yeah, Ghost is just like always really solid. You can also run like Life Orb on this one as well if you want to go Jolly. Obviously I go Sash plus Adamant. But if you want to like a bit more speed, go Jolly, run the Life Orb, and you just like one-shot Fluttermanes, which I do think is like really, really good. The next one here, it kind of like a great partner for it, and that's just the Fire Ogerpon here. I kind of touched on it the whole video. I feel like I keep praising this one. It's too damn good, dude. You have this combo right here. You have a 120 base power Ivy Cudgel. Yes, because for those of you who do not know, the mask give them 1.2 times power. So that effectively makes Ivy Cudgel 120 base power, high crit rate. You Terry, you get +1, you get adaptability, dude. It's absolutely bonkers. This mon also has Mold Breaker, which means Heat Train is not like a reliable mon into this. Because normally you're like, oh yeah, Fire plus Grass coverage, Heat Train hard walls it. It's like, no, it does not hard wall it. You got to take like 70% just to the Ivy Cudgel. If the sun is up, you might actually go down. It also has access to things like Horn Leech if it wants to stay around longer. Grassy Glide, obviously, you know, we touched on it before. You pair it up with Rillaboom. This mon goes crazy. Spiky Shield is also just like, just a better Protect. It breaks Focus Sashes. It gets good chip damage onto mons. Absolutely fantastic. It also gets things like Focus Energy. It gets Follow Me. Oh, what's that? It also gets Sword Stance. Like, dude, this mon, it's cracked. It is like the best fire type we have in the format. And I'm so glad it's good because I really like it. But I also dislike that everyone like likes it, right? I do think the fire one does want to run Jolly. I run basically this exact spread right here. I do think it's really good. You can kind of play around with it a bit more. Again, it depends on the team and playstyle. You could be someone that runs like 156 here. You could also like run this down to like this and then like invest in bulk and just run Adamant. I think that is also like a decent set. But again, it all comes down to how you want to play, how much you value the speed on this mon. But regardless, it is really good. It hits so damn hard. And again, like I was talking about grass type. Grass types are everywhere. This mon one-shots them. Flying types are everywhere. Obviously, it doesn't like the flying types, but if you go Terra Fire plus Ivy Cudgel, you're probably going to one-shot most of the fire types in the metagame. Just a really freaking good mon. Roy Moon is another mon that is kind of on the rise. This is a mon that, similar to Baxcalibur, has kind of like shot up in viability in Regulation E. One reason, because as I said before, Dragon type is really good right now. If you look at, you know, for example, all the Ogerpons, which I think are good, it resists fire, it resists grass, it resists water, right? Therefore, it straight just hard resists 3 of the 4 Ogerpon forms. Obviously, the stone form's a bit different. But yeah, the other 3, it hard walls, and I do think they are the best ones. Not to mention, Booster Energy is just great. You know, Weezing's a decent mon. It's on a handful of teams, so being able to make sure you get your Booster Energy up is great. We also spoke about how good Flying Stab is. Flying Stab feels so freaking good into the metagame right now. It really feels like not many mons resist it. And having like Booster Acrobatics of this absolutely absurd attack stat does feel really freaking good. Not to mention, it just got Knockoff. Knockoff feels so good as well. Like, just another great, you know, great move. Like, you catch things on the switch in. Like, you take, for example, Scarf Landorus' Scarfs off them. Obviously, you outspeed it with, you know, boost speed. You outspeed it, you take it off it. You can get rid of, like, covered cloaks. You can get rid of assault vest. Like, there's so much utility for knockoff. Not to mention, it's just more damage than, like, any other dark move as well. Like, that, I think it's, like, 97.5 base damage if they hold an item, which means all of a sudden, like, you know, you don't necessarily have to Terra to KO a Flutter Mane anymore. Like, before, it was like you kind of had to Terra if you wanted to one-shot it with acrobatics. Now it's like, hey, depending on their spread, depending if they're booster or not, you know, you might just one-shot it with knockoff, and if you know you're faster, then, like, hey, good on you. But I also think this monster's, like, a great support as well. Like, obviously, Dragon Dance Sweeping's great, but, like, Tailwind is, like, also really good. So, yeah, I do think this is a mon that's definitely on the rise, and I'm definitely excited to play it a bit more, because, you know, as you boys know, Moon is, like, my new favorite Pokemon in Generation 9. But anyway, continuing on with our, you know, with our anti-meta mons, it's Hisuian Arcanine. To me, this mon, it feels so good on Tailwind teams, because, like, every Tailwind team to me is the same. Everyone's going, like, Flutter Mane Tornadus. They're going, you know, Flutter Mane Ogerpon. They're going, like, so not Flutter Mane, Tornadus Ogerpon. Like, it just feels like any hyper-offensive Tornadus team does not want to look at a banded Hisuian Arcanine on lead. You've got the Intimidate to lower the attack of their allies, and then Rock Slide, you just got to one-shot Tornadus. You force Tornadus to Terra, and forcing Tornadus to Terra isn't, like, it's a good thing, right? You don't care if the Tornadus Terra, because it's like, hey, chances are it's like 30% of the time you're missing one of your Bleak Windstorms or one of my Mons. You know, you're probably setting up the Sun and whatnot. Like, yeah, you're an annoying support, but, like, this Mon just feels so good into it. Not to mention, you know, Stab Flare Blitz in the Sun is broken. This Mon also gets access to things like Extreme Speed as well, which is really good. It gets things like Close Combat. Like, yeah, dude, like, this Mon absolutely nukes, dude. Like, you, like, trust me when I tell you this, you do not want to eat that Rock Slide. The Rock Slide from this here is about to end your freaking life. And not to mention, its speed stat is like, okay, 142. It's not amazing under, like, Tailwind. You can run Jolly if you want, but you get fast enough. You got decent bulk. Like, your defensive stats are okay. You know, you've got Intimidate. Like, this Mon, dude, is the, like, to me, it's the epitome of, like, anti-meta, right? You can run this thing, like, obviously, I've got just a banded set here. I think support set's really good as well. Like, that set I showed off from Mario before. Really good where it's, like, Terra Fairy, Rocky Helmet, with Will-O-Wisp, I do think is really good as well. But Rock Slide to me just feels good. Rock Stab right now feels so good. Spread moves feel so good, and because I think Hisuian Arcanine is one of the best anti-meta ones we have. Next, it's not really like anti-meta, but it's Landorus. Again, another just like really strong Rock Slide mon. This guy just feels good. Not to mention he has you know, that really strong flying type move I was talking about before. Because like another big thing as well is like it feels like there really isn't any good flying types without Terras. Like Tornadus is obviously a great flying type. Bleak Windstorm's not good. Bundy doesn't have a flying move. You know, you look at things like D-Knight and Lando both need to go Terra for it, because obviously for Terra Blast. Roaring Moon is not a flying type, but it wants to go Terra Flying. It just feels like there's no actual good flying type. So when you've got a mon like Landorus that can just go for like a Choice Scarf Terra Blast, it actually does feel pretty damn good. But look, Lando is just Lando. This mon's really good. Obviously, you know, it pairs up incredibly well with Flutter Mane. It's really good on Trick Room, on Tailwind teams. Just overall, just one of the best ones we have in the metagame. And then to round things out, obviously Big Bad Baxcalibur. We kind of touched on him before. I think the loaded dice set is like really, really good on this mon. In terms of Terra, it depends what you want. Poison is just a great defensive Terra on this. Obviously, it helps out with your Fairy weakness, and it helps out with your Fighting weakness, which is obviously pretty important. But yeah, basically, you know, you've got Icicle Spear here, and you've got Scale Shot here. Two really good moves. You pair that with things like Swords Dance and Protect. Obviously, you know, it has Ice Shard as well, and then just an absolutely bonkers attack stat, right? Like, you look at this, dude. Like, this should not be allowed. This mon hits way too freaking hard. Its speed stat's also really good. You could honestly just max invest in bulk if you want, and you know, use your team as speed control. You can also go like max speed, and after a Scale Shot, you outspeed most Flutter Mane, so that is also really good too. But yeah, I do think this is without a doubt one of the best anti-meta mons right now. Again, the ability to hit flying types and grass types is really, really important right now. Like, again, it feels like there's 4 on every team. Like, you look at this list here, yeah? He doesn't want to eat an Icicle Spear. He doesn't want to eat an Icicle Spear. He doesn't want to eat an Icicle Spear. He is okay with eating an Icicle Spear, but he's the only one on the list. He does not want to eat an Icicle Spear. Like, this one, you could also, if you wanted, just, like, drop this for, like, Earthquake, and then just go, like, Terra Ground. And then all of a sudden, you counter every mon on this list. And these are the ones, like, these are genuinely, in my opinion, like, 6 of the best mons in the metagame. Obviously, there are things like Flutter Mane as well, which I'm not going to touch on here, because, like, everyone knows Flutter Mane's good. I don't necessarily, like, I think Flutter Mane is just the best splashable one. You can put it on every team. But I don't think it's, like, as good a counter to the meta as Chien-Pao is. But Chien-Pao, obviously, I think is a bit easier to deal with, at least at times, than Flutter Mane is. And then I guess finally as well, just one last honorable mention here. It's Cresselia. I think this mon is, like, it is so good at what it does, right? You can use it on a hard Trick Room team. or you can use it on like an offensive team as your like answer to Trick Room. It's like, hey, I've got my Tornadus, 4 really good mons, and then Cresselia. It's like, Cresselia, your job is to basically stop my opponent from getting up Trick Room. If they do, just reverse it while I heal my mons. Lunar Blessing is like an absolutely busted move. Icy Wind is like really, really good as well. Because like, again, you can play like Landorus, Tornadus, and Thunderous. So Lando, Torn, and Cresselia together. And you can go like Choice Scarf Earthquake, even like Banded Earthquake if you want. And then it's like, hey, you've got 2 mons that are off the ground. And Cresselia like offers you really good like speed control. You can also go like Ice Beam to like obviously pressure out like other Landoruses. Psychic's like really good into the current meta game. You could even run like Terra Fairy, Dazzling Gleam. I think it also gets Moonblast, right? Yeah, you can go like Terra Fairy, Moonblast. It's just a really, really consistent mon. You can basically use this as your Amoonguss counter as well with things like Safety Goggles. Like this mon, it really does it all. It has such a deep bag, and it's just like, it's so bulky. It's deceptively quick as well. Like you could honestly run this on like a Trick Room team, sorry, a Tailwind team with like this. Just go like max bulk. Maybe like if you're crazy, you go for like some Spadef investment. So Spectac investment, because like really you don't like need bulk. This one's so bulky as it is. Like you could honestly almost get away with like going something like this. Like to me this is a little crazy, and like you probably shouldn't do it for a tournament, but who knows, maybe you slap like Calm Mind on this and then all of a sudden this mon is absolutely dominating the ladder for you. But yeah guys, that's just, look, that's some of the mons I think are good into the metagame and why I think they're good into the metagame. I could talk all day, but I just realized I've been here for over 30 minutes kind of just rambling on about a lot of random shit. So yeah, I'll kind of end it here. Let me know what you guys think down below. Obviously hit the like button, subscribe, you know, and leave a comment, all that stuff. It means the world to me. Yeah, catch you guys in the next one. Peace.